This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hey guys, Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk, College Football Huddle. How are you tonight? Man, we got a lot to talk about tonight. Lots to talk about. I'll have Mark Mancini, unfortunately, would not be able to join us tonight. He's got some personal matters to attend to, so Mark won't be joining us again tonight, but he'll join us Sunday for our Stream of Consciousness and give us some really bad football picks at that point. Mark, I kid you. Joining us tonight, though, we will have Jim Beringer. You know him coming on our show on Sundays from The Last Word on Hockey. But Jim is also a huge college football aficionado, and he will be on with his take on the first college football committee playoff rankings that were out yesterday, as we all know. So we'll talk about that. That'll be our big story today. You know, last week we had some big games, obviously. Michigan blowing a game in the fourth quarter to Michigan State. Jim Harbaugh just cannot win big games, unfortunately. We'll have the playoff to talk about. We're going to talk about Gary Patterson out after 21 years, I believe, at TCU and what went on there. We'll talk about some other coaches on whose seats are getting hotter or maybe even getting colder. We'll talk about some of that. Talk about this week's coming games. We also have Lary Sorensen, color analyst from Wake Forest, joining us at about 7:45 tonight. He'll give us some ACC update, and look at Wake still lurking out there. I think they were right where I picked them to be. I think at number 9, I think they are in this initial poll. I think I picked them exactly there, actually. So lots to talk about. I mean, the poll is the big news, right? I've got a lot of problems with what went on here, and we're going to talk a lot about that tonight with Jim Beringer and a lot of our guests. Hello, Mickey Delaney. Good to see you tonight out there in the state of Washington. Your team gets to play spoiler this weekend. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they've got Oregon. Chance to play spoiler, Oregon in the first 5. The first 4 teams in the playoff, guys. Let's just jump right into it a little bit. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan State, and Oregon are the top 4. As I said all along, Cincinnati left out of the top 4. Hello, Rick. How are you today? Not shocked. It's wrong, but I'm not shocked. You know, Cincinnati's done everything that they told them they had to do. You had to beef up, you know, again, not Cincinnati specifically, but here's what, you know, the group of 5 teams are told they need to do. They need to schedule Power 5 teams, and they need to play them on the road. They did that. They went and won on the road at a team that's ranked in the top 10 in this very poll. Not good enough. They get ranked behind an Oregon team who, yes, had a great win at Ohio State early in the year, but also had a horrendous loss. They want to count good wins, which they should. You have to count bad losses. Oregon with a horrible loss at Stanford. Pac-12 is not very good, guys. Maybe no better than the AAC. You know, people want to knock People want to knock Cincinnati for playing in the AAC, and the AAC is a better league than people think. It's in a bit of a down year. SMU and Houston are good, but the rest of the league's a little bit down. But I don't think the Pac-12 is any great shakes, guys. So Oregon, I don't necessarily agree with that. Michigan State have got no problem being in this first four. I do have a problem with Alabama with one loss being in there over Cincinnati. Maybe even over Oklahoma, who I know has been winning by the skin of their teeth against some bad teams here and there. They're going to have a chance to redeem themselves. Oklahoma sits at 8 here, but they're going to have a great chance to move up. Anthony Price, stop talking about my Oregon team. Look at their good football team. I love your coach. Love your coach. They just shouldn't be in the top 4 here right now. I'm not saying they're not one of the top 4 teams in the country and may not get there at the end. Their biggest drawback is their conference. Same as Cincinnati, if you want to make that argument, guys. And Cincinnati's undefeated. You know, and Cincinnati, by the way, getting stuck at 6, I said all along they wouldn't put them in the top 4 because if they went undefeated and some of the teams below them who have got a chance to move up in the rankings because of playing a better schedule, it would look bad for the committee. It looks bad now, but it would look worse if they put them in the top 4 now and then had to drop them out when they were undefeated. So that's why I think they did this. We'll find out from Jim Behringer. Maybe Lary Sorensen will have an opinion on this later. They're number 2 in the AP poll, Anthony. But they're number 6 in the poll that matters now, the poll that we'll be paying all the attention to tonight and in the weeks going forward, which is the college football playoff rankings. There's a committee that makes this poll up. Make it up might be a great word. You know, people are in a way, like I said, outraged about Oklahoma at 9-0. But they are 9-0. You know, you are what your record says you are, as excuse me, the fat bastard. Oh, excuse me. Bill Parcells often said. Maybe not so much in college football because you can manipulate that record. It can look better, and you're playing, you know, worse competition. Oklahoma's had a habit of playing down their competition. Well, they blew out a bad Texas Tech team last week, 52-21, finally beating a lesser team by as much as they should. But this first ranking, look at Notre Dame's got a good shot of moving up yet. Wake Forest, we'll have Lary Sorensen on later. They got a tough road to hoe. They got games coming up now against North Carolina State, who's a good team. They've got Clemson left. We know Clemson's had a down year, but you know they've got to play them yet, and they also have to play. Gosh, the other team's skipping my mind right now. We'll dive into this deeper as we go forward here, by the way. But am I missing? Oh, North Carolina. This weekend, they got North Carolina. They're going to earn their way. They get hurt a little bit by Pittsburgh losing, by the way. Just, and kind of, again, hurting the ACC overall. You know, right now, as it stands now, if Wake Forest can continue to win and win that Atlantic Division, which they should do, but they got to beat North Carolina State and Clemson to do that. They would still play Clemson. I'm sorry, they would still play Pittsburgh in the championship game. Now, Pittsburgh is now fallen to 3-1 in the conference and 6-2 overall. Not a good loss for Pittsburgh this past week against Miami, 38-34. A Miami team that's down. So lots of stuff to take away from this. Lots of stuff to try to digest, guys. This ranking. Oklahoma, by the way, can easily, I think, move up from 8 if they take care of business, they've still got Oklahoma State. They've still got Iowa State. They've still got, I think, Baylor. Baylor? Yeah, that's the three teams they got left. Oklahoma State, Baylor, and ISU. Not in that order. Plus the Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma can easily jump over Cincinnati. Can easily jump over some of these other teams. Then what? Committee's got a lot to answer for, but I'm not shocked at what they've done here. Just not shocked. If you are, I'm surprised. Yeah, I think Wake can beat Pitt as well, and Clemson might get them. Pitt, they wouldn't get until the ACC championship game, Rick. And again, we'll have Lary Sorensen on at Sorensen on at. We got a cat problem here tonight, guys. My wife's gonna have a fit. Where was it? Wake Forest needs to run the table, and Pitt losing this week to Miami hurts the ACC. I mean, again, no undefeated power conference team has ever been left out of this playoff. They'll have a hard time leaving Wake Forest out if it happens. But the fact that the league is down could happen. Wake Forest with one loss can't get in, I don't think. We'll talk to Jim Beringer about that. We'll talk to Lary Sorensen about that. There's going to be some one-loss teams that have a chance to get in here. But look at if you got one loss, you better be Alabama or you better be Georgia. I don't think Oregon can run the table and get in with that one win. Just not crazy about putting these one-loss teams above the undefeateds, as we talked about. I know Jim's got some strong feelings on this. We're gonna bring him in the room here. We're on the same page, I think, mostly, but I'm not sure if it's for the same reasons. Good morning. I'm usually saying good morning to you, Jim. Good evening to Jim Beringer. How are you tonight?
Keith, it's good to talk to you again, buddy. I think we're on the same page with a lot of this stuff.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, as we talked about, and I want to focus on with you mostly, I guess, is the initial rankings of the college football playoff committee. Lots of rancor out there, I think, today, depending on who you are. There's Oklahoma fans that are upset. There's Ohio State fans that are upset. And most of all, there's Cincinnati and group of five rooters. I've been a big fan of the AAC for 3 years now. And they get no love. They do everything the NCAA asks them to do. Go out and play Power 5 teams and play them on the road. Well, they did it. And they beat one of the teams in the top 10 on the road. And where do they sit? I said all along, Jim, and I'll let you speak in a second, I swear to God. I've been saying all year long, when this first ranking comes out, there'd be no way Cincinnati to be in the top 4, because if they put them in the top 4 and they stay undefeated and they take them out of the last poll, they'd look worse than they look today. And I think that's why they did what they did. What's your thoughts?
Look, I agree with Joey Galloway, what he said last night. That's disrespectful and it's insulting to Cincinnati, because now they got to look behind them because of what's going on behind them. Instead of, okay, they're at 5, let's see what work they got to do to get into 4. Now all this stuff has to happen for them to be in the playoff, and it's just insulting because Gary Barta is like, oh, we respect Cincinnati over the last 2 years, and it's just complete crap, because looking forward to hockey, I love it, but it's just complete garbage.
Good point. Go ahead.
It's just complete garbage. It's a complete lie out of his mouth. The problem is it's a non-Power 5 school, even though I think the AAC is some great football. If you watch it on Saturdays, some great games.
Awesome.
You know, we just had a great game. I believe it was SMU Houston. What a fun game to watch. If you didn't see that game, you're missing out. It's just not always about these Power 5 schools. There's a lot of good talent. And Cincinnati has done everything to committee has asked them to do, except they continue to move the goalposts because they don't play in a Power 5. So let's break it down. Look at Oregon, right? One loss team at 4. Okay, their win is over Ohio State. I understand putting them ahead of Ohio State because the whole night the pattern was if you beat the team head-to-head, that's fine. What I have a problem with is they judged Oklahoma on their poor start and the way they played certain games, and they're undefeated. But you didn't judge Oregon on their bad loss to Stanford, and they didn't play great against UCLA. So, and they didn't have a couple other good games in there. Cincinnati did the same thing. They're still undefeated, but what if they had done that and they were playing a Power 5 school, Power 5 conference? You know well they'd be in the top 4. You know it.
Absolutely. I talked earlier, I don't know if you may not have heard, but I was talking earlier about, the committee talks about good wins, but what about bad losses? I'm seeing Oregon's, and again, Anthony Price got on me a little bit because that's his team, but Oregon had a great win at Ohio State early in the year when their defense was horrendous, and Ohio State's got much better since then. But you can't just say, "Oh, that is more important to you." Well, maybe it is more important. Maybe it's the same amount of importance. They go to a bad Stanford team, mediocre at best, and lose out on in the Pac-12. And I'd make an argument that the last 3 years the Pac-12 is no better than the AAC in my mind. AAC might be down a little bit this year. They're not as deep as they were. But SMU, no. Houston, Cincinnati's really good. But some of those other teams have fallen off a little bit, which might have hurt Cincinnati a little. But come on,
So what you're saying is not only do you have to do everything, but now we're bringing the BCS back into it because style points now matter.
Yeah. Not for everybody, though.
No, not for everybody. So you're in a Power 5 conference because, look, you look at it, Michigan lost close to Michigan State. They're 7. So what happens if Alabama goes to the SEC title game, loses a close game? The furthest they're going to fall, what, 4? Maybe?
I'll tell you, they'll have some explaining to do. They put a 2-loss team in there above, an undefeated Cincinnati or an undefeated Oklahoma in my mind.
Right. Because Oklahoma's still got a backloaded schedule. They got a tough. See, personally, I think though everybody knocks the Big 12, they play everybody.
Yeah.
And those games really matter because still got Oklahoma State, Baylor. Those are 2 tough games. They could lose one of those games, and then they got the Big 12 championship game. That's going to be a tough. And there's no guarantee Alabama gets to Atlanta for the SEC title game because they still got to play Auburn, who's turning it up right now.
You get, that going back to the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma, they've been hurt by not having style points. That's why they've ranked them. But the difference between them and Cincinnati is it's almost impossible for them to leapfrog these other teams, even if they win out, unless people are losing in front of them, which a couple people have to, but not everybody's got to lose here, right?
No,
or is guaranteed to lose. Oklahoma, on the other hand, if they win out, I don't care what happens in front of them. They're going to be in the 4. They have to be.
You would think they have to be, right?
They have to be. I've talked about Wake Forest, and I've got Lary Sorensen, who's a good friend of the show, the color analyst for Wake Forest, coming on about 7:45, and we'll certainly talk more then. But Wake Forest is another one. If they run the table, and I've said this a bunch here lately, no Power 5 conference team has ever gone undefeated, won the conference title, and not been in the top 4. So you could have a litmus test here with Oklahoma and Wake Forest both. If they run the table, and there's still a lot of work to be done by both teams, don't get me wrong. What do you do then? If Alabama's still got a law, if they got 2, they're out. They have to be out.
They have to be out. They have to be out. If they have 2 losses, they're out. The whole thing with the Big East will play itself out. The Big 10 East will play itself out with Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State. That is going to work itself out.
Yeah.
the thing I look at it, and I've watched a lot of games. These what is it? Like teams like Army, Navy, Air Force. Those schools are tough to play against. And Wisconsin found out the hard way against Army that that was a lot closer than a lot of people expected that game to be. But knowing Army the way I know Army, because I watch the team a lot, I
Love
know
that
if they're
team.
playing, they play those teams really close, and usually it's a mistake that costs them the game. But they were really in that game, and obviously Wisconsin got that win over Iowa, so that's why they're there. But if you look at their style points, they haven't had a great thing, and that's the only thing that's going to really help the Big Ten East is because the teams in the Big Ten West are starting to put things together again. But
Yeah.
like you said, if Oklahoma goes undefeated, you can't keep them out. Wake Forest, yeah, so the ACC is down. Well, some of their wins are going to start to look good, especially if Miami starts playing the way that they're playing. They're
Yeah.
starting to get it together now. So, Cincinnati's getting punished for what they did or didn't do, but they have two wins on the road, and one of them is against number 10 Notre Dame. I don't understand how they're not in the top 4.
Right. And they're going to have beaten, if they run the table, they're going to have beaten SMU and Houston, who's probably, I didn't see the AP ranking. Did Houston get in the rankings this week? They did.
Yeah, they did.
They're all in. All three of those teams. Houston's at 20 in the AP poll, and I don't think they're in the coaches poll or the playoff poll, but so they'll have beaten. They'll probably have beaten as many top 25 teams as anybody in the country in this poll.
Yeah,
if they run the table.
Right. So according to the AP poll, which we've all grew up with, they've beaten. Well, I think Indiana was ranked at the time when they beat Indiana. I believe they were ranked in the AP at the time. Yeah. They beat them. So that would, if they run the table being Houston and SMU and they stay in the AP poll, they beat 4 top 25 teams in the AP. Like, it's ridiculous.
Indiana having a down year. Everybody thought Indiana would be a lot better this year, having so many players back off a great year last year they had. And them being down this year has hurt Cincinnati as much as anything, I think. And unfortunately, the AAC, you know what? I'm giving excuses away now, but to me, it didn't matter. The AAC could have been as strong as it's been and as deep as it's been the last few years if UCF was really good and Memphis was really good. And they still would have found a reason to put them at 6 or 7. I mean,
exactly.
Because they don't want them. They don't want them in there.
No, they don't. Right? ESPN, as much as ESPN loves this underdog stuff and all, they hype up Cincinnati, and there's some good analysts that'll break it down, and like Joey Galloway and then Jesse Palmer, he'll bring certain things, but you ask anybody at ESPN, they do not want Cincinnati in the playoff. And who's to say these games wouldn't be close? What, the committee? Did they not watch Cincinnati play Georgia in the Peach Bowl? I mean, that game was
great.
Exactly. Don't tell me it wouldn't be a game, because every national semifinal except one has been a blowout.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's always been my argument for expanding the playoff. People go, nobody wants to watch Alabama beat Coastal Carolina by 40. Well, first of all, who doesn't want to go root for David against Goliath?
Yeah.
And even if they lose by 40, how can it be less entertaining than watching Notre Dame get beaten in the semifinal every year, right?
Exactly. Or Oklahoma by 40.
Right. I mean, God, and now they're already, and I guess to switch gears a little bit, because this is all this is going to turn to a conversation about what's going to happen with the playoff, right? The expansion to playoffs.
Right.
We already thought we had a 12-team deal in 2025. I thought it would happen. I really wanted Cincinnati to get in, or even Wake Forest. One of those teams gets in. That playoff's happening next year, not 4 years from now. It's going to happen next year. But now they're already hedging their bets. Notre Dame doesn't want anything except a 4 or a 12. They don't want the 8 because it gives them less chances to get in. If the only way there's going to be 8 is if the group of 5 is involved. So you got 6. You got 6 guaranteed spots, and Notre Dame's only got a shot at 2 instead of 4. Notre Dame wants it to stay the way it is.
Yeah, but Notre Dame's playing a conference now. So if they run the table or they only have one loss,
they're not playing it. They played last year in the ACC. That's it.
They're
They're back independent.
They're not playing the ACC schedule this year?
No, they've still got some kind of, strategic alliance with the ACC, but they're not playing. The ACC didn't play. I have this problem with the ACC. Last year when Notre Dame needed the ACC because they couldn't schedule anybody because of COVID, the ACC took them in and said, all right, we'll let you play this year. If I was the ACC, I would have played hardball with them and said, you want in now, you stay in.
Right, exactly. So if they had actually stayed in the ACC and played that schedule, it would have been fine. Like they would have had no problem with 8 teams. But all right, so go do your job and win, or don't be overrated like you are. Because
they don't want that. They want that. They want all that money to themselves, Jim. That's what they want. They don't want to be splitting with their partners.
And you know what? I forgot who it was. I was seeing somebody say this. If they did expand the playoffs, I agree. I think I think if they had the first round on these college campuses, that would be fun.
Let's see, Rick's got another comment here. Both Minnesota and Northwestern are both down this year, but Minnesota's playing good football right now for sure, Rick. They've taken control of that South Division in the Big Ten, where I thought Iowa was a shoo-in for that championship game here just 2 weeks ago.
Not anymore. And they were ranked 2. And they were ranked 2 in the AP. So
they might be the worst team ever, ranked number 2 ever. And I got fooled. I thought they actually had an offense this year and a passing offense, and man, I got schooled. I got schooled bad there.
It's such a shame because how do you take the I know we're off topic, but I just bring in these rankings. How do you take the number 2 team in the AP and put them at 6? Like, it doesn't make sense.
No. Well, they say, again, they give themselves an out, right? Because they say, we don't use the polls really as criteria. We don't look at, this. We don't look at that. And I'm like, you guys look at all this stuff. Who are you kidding me? You look at all of it and you do what you think. I don't have a problem. I only have a couple of problems. I have a big problem with the Cincinnati thing, as you do and a lot of people do. I really got a problem with I still have a problem with Oregon being at 4, to be honest with you. I just don't think they belong there.
So here's the thing. That's where Cincinnati should be at 4, because then you could put Oregon at 5 and Ohio State at 6, because
they can win their way in.
And they got to win their way in because, okay, the head-to-head matters, fine. Or you lower them because they both have 1 loss, and you put Oklahoma higher.
Right. And here's the thing. You know what, Jim? I've been preaching this since almost the beginning of the season, that I think they feel in the committee that they would look worse putting Cincinnati in now and letting teams pass them as they continue to win, which happens all the time, right? Happened in the AP and the coaches poll all year long. Cincinnati kept winning and teams kept flying by them. How many teams are ranked ahead of them right now, even at number 7? That started out behind them.
Right.
Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State. No, Ohio State was behind them in the beginning of the year. So there's 3 teams in a poll that started out behind them, and all Cincinnati has done is keep on winning. But unfortunately, they weren't beaten Tulsa by 60 like, everybody thinks they should. So it's crazy. Let's spin off this conversation to the expansion of the playoffs a little bit. I like the idea that they're going to expand. I'm happy with the 12-team plan they have been kicking around. I still want to go to 16 and give all 10 conferences an automatic bid, and you still got 6 at-large teams. And to me, that's the way it ought to go. And there's lots of money to be made. There's games for all the bowls to play in. All the bowls that people care about. Right. I mean, who cares about the Yankee Pinstripe Bowl? Nobody
cares about that. No one cares.
I mean, I think 16 teams would be the way to go. And I got to be careful I talk about this. I don't know if you've heard this story, but I had a guy threaten to sue me. He messaged me after when I did a vlog about this. And he said, I had this idea and I wrote a book about this, 12 years ago. And you're copyright infringing on me. And I'm like, dude, you're not the only guy. I'm not the only guy who's ever talked about this. People talk about this every day.
Right,
How many
exactly.
people are you going to sue? But I think that's the way to go. I'd be happy with the 12-team plan they put on the board. What are your thoughts about expansion, and should they do it? Which plan should they go with?
I mean, look, if they expand the playoff, that's all well and good, but you have to give the group of 5 team an automatic bid into there. You can't move the goalposts all the time. Like
Yeah.
you have to say, okay, if we're gonna expand the playoff, then it's gotta be for everybody. It's gotta be, you know what, we have a group of 5 team, they're automatic in, there. Best record, best team like they do with the New Year's Six Bowl. That team's automatically in. They
Yeah.
have to be. Or because if that's not the case, it's just going to be Power Five. These teams are never going to get a
Oh.
shot, and it's a waste of time. And the regular season's not going to matter because they can do everything they can to bow down to the committee as much as they want, but they would never get in. Who was it? I forget. Somebody sent this out. Yeah, I gotta find it. Yesterday, somebody said something really intriguing about the playoff
Yeah,
and
while you look
everything.
for that, I agree with you, Anthony, by the way. Alabama should have to win their way in, too. They should not be at number 2 right now. That's
No,
another
they
thing
should
I
not be.
agree with.
No, I agree with that.
And while you're doing that,
right.
too,
Yeah.
that 12-team format, by the way, would be the top, the automatic bids would go to the top 6. The conference winners they're the highest ranked, so it wouldn't necessarily go to the Power 5 conferences.
That would
if
be
Cincinnati was ranked above, the Pac-12, well, they'd be in.
Right. So this guy yesterday, after the rankings came out, said the CFP excluding non-Power 5 teams from the playoffs hasn't just made the playoff race less interesting. It's further incentivized any good non-Power 5 team to leave their conference, entrenching the Power 5 as untouchable and slowly draining the life out of the non-Power 5 leagues.
Well, there you go. That's why Cincinnati and Houston and UCF are going to the Big 12. That's exactly why right there.
That's exactly the reason why. Because
and another good league, the AAC is left high and dry because
formerly the Big East.
Like the old Big East.
The old Big East, man. Great teams, all ACC. They went all different spots now. But that was a great league. That was a great league to watch. Big East, all Big East Bowl. But, I personally think 8 teams be good enough to go. Just 4 to 8. See how 8 plays out. Because somebody's always going to cry no matter how many it is. 12, 16. It's not going to matter. We see it with NCAA basketball. I should be in because of this, that, and other thing. I think 8 teams, fair enough. You go and go from there.
What I find very interesting is that probably the least likely scenario is 8 teams, because even the Power 5 teams don't like that. If the 18 playoff guarantees a group of 5 a spot, that leaves only 2 at-larges, and none of the Power 5 conferences are going to want that, and Notre Dame doesn't want that.
No,
and
but but 8 makes sense. They'll probably go to 12, but the problem is some of the bowls don't want to be associated with it. Like the Rose Bowl still wants to keep their old matchup. Like they still have to get all these bowls to be on board if they're going to do it.
The big thing, the Rose Bowl wants to keep their spot at 4:45 on January 1st. That's what they want. They can find a way to make this work with the bowl games.
Yeah.
And again, except for the big games, 6 bowl games outside of the big 6 bowl games, maybe a little couple more I suppose I could come up with, but let's just say 6. Nobody cares. Look in the stands. There's nobody at them. These, again, I pick on the Pinstripe Bowl all the time because it always comes to mind. The CarQuest Bowl in North Carolina. Nobody cares.
No.
They're there to the schedule.
I'll be honest. I've been to the Pinstripe Bowl. It was actually a fun experience to be there because I watched Notre Dame play again. I believe they played Rutgers or whatever.
They did a few years back. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice. It was cool to be there. Would I go every year? No. Do I watch it every year? No, because it doesn't matter. I'm used to the New Year's 6 games. I like those games. The big bowl games, I'm gonna watch.
That's what people care about,
Right.
So
exactly. It's crazy.
Anthony's got a question here about Wake Forest being a 9, and I've kind of I'm a Miami fan by marriage, but I've kind of adopted. Right, I've kind of adopted Wake Forest because of my friend Lary Sorensen, and I like good stories. I'm not a bandwagon jumper. When it comes to college football, I just like good stories. Wake's a great story. Cincinnati's a great story. You know, there's great stories out there. And I think Wake Forest being at 9 is good. I think that's fair for them right now, to be honest with you. They haven't played the best
fair ranking.
Yeah, the ACC's down there, but again, they've got a chance to play their way up. If they win out, they're going to be in a conversation for the top 4. So I don't have a problem with that because they've got a chance to make it up. Cincinnati doesn't probably. That's the problem. They can win out and they may not move a lick.
No, they could drop.
The football lovers will watch the lesser bowls. Yeah, they will, Rick. I get that, but that's all they're there for is for ESPN's TV schedule. Go look at the stands. They don't go to watch the games in person. I can tell you.
No, but I think Wake's ranking is fine. I'm going to be honest. I didn't expect when they played Army that it would be a basketball game. The way the final score turned out, that was a little high-scoring affair up at Mikey Stadium. But, Army played them tight, and Wake's a good team. The ranking is definitely fair, and you know what? They're gonna move up if they continue to win. And same with Oklahoma. But I think the committee put Cincinnati's ceiling at 6. I really do.
I agree. And I don't see any way they can get out of here without help from a lot of teams blowing it on top, right?
Nope.
Teams are going. Here's the problem. Besides teams, they're hoping for teams to drop. They're going to have teams that are going to go buy them as well. That's the problem.
Yeah, and it could fall in a ranking.
They could if they play their way up with the Wake Forests and the Oklahomas. You know, Jim. Before I let you go, I want to get your opinion on something. We were talking about the AAC, and I think you got kind of the same opinion I've had, and some of my viewers have. I've gotten into some very strong debates about how good that league is. They don't think it's any good, and I'm telling them they're wrong. These guys don't get a chance to play anybody. That's why you don't see how good they are. But you did, as you mentioned, last year with Cincinnati against Georgia. The thing I wanted to ask you about was, now this team gets much weaker. This league gets much weaker with Cincinnati and Houston and UCF leaving in a couple of years to go to the Big 12. They bring in 6 teams from Conference USA. Not sure how much that does for the league. I would have liked to see them do something a little different. They'd flirted with some teams from the Mountain West, which I think would have been a better option. I had been in favor of them. Navy's already there. I was in favor of them really selling hard, get all the military academies in that league. And I thought it would have been pretty cool to have Air Force, Navy, and Army all in that same league. And I thought it would have been a lot of fun.
I would have been totally down for Air Force, Army being in that conference. Especially with some of those teams leaving, they could play with a bunch of those teams in that division. And they could play, especially with the way Jeff Monken's coaching Army right now. He's putting a good football team on the field every week. So, it's a shame that they're going to be losing teams like that. But like I said before, with the quote that I put out there, like they have to because it's Power 5 or bust. You can't do anything. The AC's got good teams in there. You just got to give it a chance. Everybody jumped on the UCS story a couple years ago. Good college football story. Everybody was watching, and they want to see if they go undefeated. People were looking. I was following Coastal Carolina again this year when they were. I was hoping they were running the table again. We love those college football stories. The AAC, a lot. Just because you're not in the Power 5 doesn't mean there's not good college football out there. The AAC's got good college football.
You mentioned Jeff Monken. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country with what he does at that, at Army. That's not an easy place to obviously compete, much less win. And he does a great job up there. It's only a matter of time before he gets I think a big, or unless and I can never say Navy's coach's name. So I call him Coach Ken because I can't say his last name. Can you say his last name?
I can't say. I can't even. I don't even want to try to announce his name.
That's why I call him Coach Ken. Those two guys are two of the best coaches in the country, and Coach Ken's turned down Arizona State. Arizona, and he's turned down some other big Georgia Tech, I think. He's turned down some other big-name schools. Moncton flirted with Tennessee this last year. You think he's going to move on at some point?
I would hope he doesn't, because he's built such a good program there. The Army is finally getting back. They have a passing quarterback now. They're just not running the ball now. I don't know if he's going to leave. Maybe eventually he does, but I would hope he's a lifer there for a while. And let's see what Army can do. That would be me.
I agree. Jim, thanks for coming on tonight. We're going to have you on. We're going to get back into the hockey on Sundays, at least for, quick updates. We got to, now that baseball's done, I can put that aside here this week, and college football will wind down a little bit, and we'll get you back on the 9:00 hour, and we'll still talk some college football. We'll bring you back on here as we start to close out the season too. I'll get you on here with my boy Mark Mancini. You guys will get along great. He can't pick anything. You know what you're talking about. He never knows what he's talking about.
I appreciate it. I try to be a well-rounded sports guy.
I kid Mark, by the way.
Yeah, no, I've heard the show. The guys are good. I just want to give my opinion on a lot of stuff. I'm a college football guy, a hockey guy, whatever. I filled in for you on your New York sports show. I hope I did a good job.
Well, there you go.
So, I appreciate it.
Rick on Sundays. He wants you back. So we'll get you back very soon, I promise.
On Dan's show, a lot of people have been calling for you to get me back on the show on Sunday morning. So just a heads up.
You got a write-in campaign going. Bring Jim Barry. He's expensive. That's the problem, guys. This guy's expensive to have on. So
celebrity.
We'll talk and we'll have you back. Now that once the furnace goes on, I can start thinking about hockey. And the furnace just went on today. My wife wouldn't let me hold out any longer. So
there you go, man. But
all right,
Keith, thanks for having me on. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of your program. Can't wait to listen to it. And thank you for let me have a voice on your college football show.
Always. You'll be back soon. I promise you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me in, buddy. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye. So Jim Barringer, who we'll call Jim Barringer from The Last Word on College Football tonight. Jim's great on hockey, and Jim obviously knows his stuff on college football too. And I'd wanted to get him involved sooner, and that's my fault for not doing that. And Rick, we're definitely going to get him back involved on Sunday mornings very shortly. So maybe shorter segments. I don't know. I got to find a way to get everything into 2 hours, man. And Anthony, you jumped the Maryland team, and look how that turned out. I kind of was on Maryland for a while too, and that didn't turn out well. As soon as I got on them, man, they went in the toilet. So listen, guys, a couple other things to talk about while we wait for Lary Sorensen to jump on from Wake Forest, probably about 7:45. So we only got a couple of minutes. Couple of big stories, and maybe we'll jump back to them after we get done with Larry. A couple of big stories on the coaching front this week. Gary Patterson fired at TCU after 21 years. He did remarkable things with that program, and I think they've been down the last couple of years. But he did wonderful, wonderful things when he first brought that team into the Big 12. He brought them into a national prominence. They were left, high and dry when the old Southwest Conference disbanded, and Texas A&M and Baylor and all these teams ran off to the Big 12. They were left high and dry. They finally got into Big 12, and he did a great job. And now he has a couple down years, and he's forced out. He didn't want to go. They made it sound like a mutual parting of ways. He was fired. Let's be clear. He was fired like Ed Orgeron was fired and asked to finish out the year. And unlike Ed Orgeron, he said, no, I'll go now. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We're going to talk about some coaches on the hot seat once we get through with Larry. But the other big news I can tell you about is Jeff Traylor, who's one of the most sought-after coaches, especially in the Texas jobs, Texas Tech, TCU now. Who knows what other jobs will open up. He's the coach at Texas San Antonio, got them off to a great start, and he signed a new 10-year, $28 million contract. Now, I know you're going to say, contracts are only as good as the paper they're written on, and he could jump to a better job at any point in time. but he's got a 7.5. It's a buyout that starts at $7.5 million. Going to be very tough to kind of move him. But I don't think he wants to go necessarily. He's building something at Texas San Antonio, and I think he wants to see it through for a little bit. Could come back and bite him in the butt later on. Obviously you got to strike while the iron's hot, but it's his career, and he's doing a great job, and he says he's doing it for his players, and I want to take him at his word for that. And again, there's going to be $7.5 million reasons why teams are going to maybe move away from him sometimes in some of these coaches' searches. I promised you Lary Sorensen this week, and I promise I try to deliver on my promises, and I'll welcome Larry in now. Hello, Larry.
Keith, how you doing tonight?
I am doing great. We just got through doing some venting about the initial playoff rankings last night. Actually, I will say I think Wake Forest got a fair ranking in this, and then they've left themselves in a position to move up if they continue to play as well and win the games they have in front of them.
Well, I think the biggest thing is there's a pathway. You know, instead of just saying the ACC is down this year, so we're going to put your undefeated team at 14, which means you're shut out and you've got no chance to get there. At 9, there is a reasonable pathway because in this last month, the Big Ten teams are going to knock each other off. Our Wake Forest strength of schedule for the month of November, I've been told it's the 22nd strongest strength of schedule in the country. So that, if you combine that with the earlier part of the season, pulls you up towards the 50s, which makes it a much more easy decision for people to make to bump Wake Forest up.
What about, obviously the schedule is, they got a tough 3 weeks ahead of them, obviously, just to get to the conference championship game with North Carolina. Even though they've had a down year from what they were expected to have, they're always dangerous and they can score points. That game ought to, that one might put the Army Wake Forest game to shame when you get all done putting the fire out on that scoreboard. But you got North Carolina State and Clemson. That's a tough road to hoe. Let's just say they win those games, though. I thought if they had won out and Pittsburgh continued to play the way they were playing and they played in the championship game, it really would boost Wake Forest's profile. And again, undefeated, they're going to have a hard time leaving any Power 5 team out if they're undefeated conference champions.
Well, I really don't see how you can leave one of the Power 5 conference teams out if they haven't lost. And, and people say, well, Clemson's down, so the whole league must be down. I kind of have a feeling because of the COVID effect, everybody else is playing a little bit better. And Dave Clawson said early in the year that this is going to be one of the most exciting college football seasons that we've seen in a long, long time. And I think he's exactly right. I think that you turn your TV on or you turn your radio on and listen to us, hopefully at some point in time. And they are exciting games and they're competitive and they are good teams going back and forth. And people, I hope, are really enjoying the college football season because we all are.
Oh, for sure. This has been an exciting, crazy season. Yeah. One of my regulars, Rex, wants to make sure he knows that you and my previous guest, Jim Bering, are two of his favorites on my podcast. So you got that going for you. I know we don't pay him much. I know we don't pay him much for these appearances, Larry, but we kind of try to compliment you where we can.
Yeah, send letters to Learfield, would you please?
Let's talk a little. It's funny. You were talking about, and we've talked about it when you've been on this year, that people are focusing on the teams that are down in the ACC, like because Clemson isn't just the ACC. Just because Clemson's down or North Carolina was projected to have a really good season and hasn't. Some of these teams, as the season's gone on, have gotten better. Syracuse has played much better football the last month. Virginia's played good football. Miami's finally starting to get it together after a horrible start.
People are saying that, but when you look at the individual numbers, and I think particularly if you look at the quarterbacks, the job that the quarterbacks have done, I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind across the country that the ACC has the best group of quarterbacks cumulatively than any conference in the country because they've been phenomenal and the numbers back it all up. When you look at the amount of people that are in the top 10 with all the different individual numbers, it's really remarkable. And the guy at Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, Dave Clawson doesn't believe in running numbers up. He doesn't believe in flashy individual numbers, which is why Kenneth Walker is in East Lansing instead of in Winston-Salem. And it's a system. It's a system that wins as a whole. And I think that the job Sam Hartman has done has been phenomenal and still putting up very good individual numbers.
Yeah. Do you think he's not getting the love he should get in the Heisman rankings right now? I mean, it's kind of wide open, but.
Probably part of it is because there are so many good quarterbacks in the ACC. I was listening to a show this morning, and of course, if you go back to 2016, the ACC had some terrific quarterbacks that came out of that class, maybe the best ever, and they put the numbers next to each other, and this year's group blows 2016 away.
Yeah, I really think after last week's performance, Kenneth Walker's the odds out of Vegas don't say it. He's moved up, but they've still got Bryce Young number one just because he's the Alabama quarterback and he's going to throw for 1,000 touchdowns a year. I think Kenneth Walker might have put himself in a driver's seat after last week's performance. It was just an amazing performance, the best I've seen out of a running back in a few years in my mind.
And the thing that I liked about it, and Kenneth Walker is a terrific kid. He spent a couple of years at Wake Forest. We've seen him make 94 and 75-yard runs, so it was no surprise to us. But he's having a great year. And the one thing people keep saying is, think of him in the Wake offense. Let's not forget Donovan Green is a young man who was injured before the season started, a wideout that was projected to be the number one receiver on the team. So throw another deep threat into the mix for Wake Forest, and the offense would really be scary.
It would be scary. I like their chances. I mean, I think sitting there at 9, they've got a good chance to win their way up and in. Them and Oklahoma still control their own destiny in my mind. Where Cincinnati, unfortunately, was a lot of our topic. Cincinnati is getting jobbed here. They've got no chance to move up because even if teams are losing in front of them, there's going to be teams winning behind them that are going to go by them. I think the committee's done them an injustice.
It's a really tough situation, but you start talking about strength of schedule and everything else. And I believe that Cincinnati's strength of schedule is further down the list than Wake Forest is. So, they keep saying, well, they've got that win over Notre Dame. Terrific win, no question about it. Indiana at 2-6. If you're bragging and one of your key wins is a win against a Power 5 conference team that's 2-6, I'm not sure how when compared to teams that are playing Power 5 schools every week. It makes a difference.
In fairness, though, when they played that game, Indiana, I believe, was still ranked and coming off a really good year last year. So early on, that game looked like that's the interesting thing about college football, right? Good wins become bad wins later on, and bad losses don't look so bad later because teams play better.
And then the draft comes out, and you say, how did that team not win more than 7 games with 11 players drafted off of that team? And that. The only thing I know for sure is that the poll that's going to come out predicting the bowl games and the top 25 for next year that'll come out the day after the championship game is one I don't pay any attention to.
Yeah, and as well we shouldn't. And this year is a perfect example why. Because look at these teams that are in this top 10 in this first ranking. Michigan State wasn't ranked. Michigan wasn't ranked. Cincinnati was. Wake Forest wasn't ranked.
Nope.
And if I take it down to 11, I don't believe Oklahoma State was ranked. Baylor at 12 wasn't ranked. So
I heard a number that there have been 61 games this year that the top 25, the ranked teams have lost, and 46 of them have been to unranked teams.
Yeah, I was going to just mention that second number myself tonight. That's got to be a record, that 46. I'm not sure about the 61 because it all depends on, who plays who when. But the 46 has got to be, if it's not a record, it's got to be damn close to it, I would think.
Yeah, that was our topic of discussion at lunch today. Had lunch with Ron Wellman, the former athletic director at Wake Forest, and my broadcast partner, Stan Cotton, and Steve Shutt, who is kind of the Wake Forest historian, was the sports information director for a long, long time. And we were trying to figure that particular statistic out to see what it compares to on a normal year.
Yeah.
Because we're saying this is so unusual. Well, what is it normally? So.
Did you come up with an answer?
No. Need for an entertaining hour and a half, though.
Hour and a half lunch, man. I gotta get your job, for crying out loud.
All you do is show up and talk on Saturdays. It's easy.
Well, guys like make it harder because we break up your week. You want to be home with your family or out with your family.
I always take a nugget out of this conversation and throw it into a broadcast on Saturday.
Well, I hope I get some kind of credit there. I don't. I don't know.
Heck no.
You're right. Nobody's going to see it anyway. So they're going to see me.
It's the old broadcast adage: if you steal from me, you steal twice.
That's awesome. Let's talk. Before we go on, I want to talk about. We talked when you were on last about what a great experience it was going to be for you to go to Army for a lot of reasons. You were going to get to spend time with your family, and you hadn't been to the Army experience. What was that like for you? What did you take away from that? Besides the tremendous game.
I took away from that. I took the fact that I need to get in better shape because traffic was so bad getting in. We had to walk about 2 miles to get into the stadium because my son picked us up at the hotel. We left about 45 or 50 minutes before the team bus was scheduled to leave. And the team bus passed us with its police escort about 2 miles outside of the stadium. So wow. We actually were hoofing it by that time and did that. But it was magnificent setting, unbelievable venue. Does your heart good to see the cadets and the future leaders of America sitting over on the other side, being disciplined and contributing to watching the athletes and everything else. And the game itself was, beyond bizarre. The over and under for the game was 53.5, and the losing team scored 56.
Yeah, they must have hit that in the first quarter, didn't they? 53. Good grief, jeez.
It 49 points by halftime, and it was wild, but unbelievable experience, great time, fabulous setting. The leaves starting to change a little bit up there in the Northeast, and we really had a great time. And to be able to come away with it with a win after all of that was especially fun.
Well, let's look ahead a little bit. So you've got North Carolina this weekend on the road. My stepson may be at that game. He's doing his post-grad work in Chapel Hill. Then you've got NC State at home, and you're at Clemson. What's the mood of what's the mood down there at Wake Forest? Are they excited? Do they really think they're in the championship hunt?
They do. They absolutely do. And I think that one of the things that has happened is because of COVID again, you've been able to keep your senior leaders around. And, back in the old days of 3 yards in a cloud of dust in the Big Ten, Bo Schembechler was the coach at Michigan when I was there. Yeah. And I never quite understood why he always said your team is only as good as your captains and your seniors. And I think we're really seeing some of that this year. Wake Forest started out in 2019 at 7-0 as well. And things splintered and guys started thinking, they're telling me I'm going to be drafted, so maybe I better watch my knees. And guys started getting a little bit more individualized and it kind of fell apart. And this year, there are 9 sixth-year seniors. There's 1 7-year player that's on the Wake Forest roster. And I think that around the country, we're seeing this. And it's why I think the caliber of play is up. You look at teams that have, like Cincinnati, that I think have 20 out of their 22 starters came back because guys are staying around and they have that extra year of eligibility.
Right. I think they're sitting really good because I think the team's probably, and you got a better pulse on this than I do. If there was going to be a place, they're not going to let down against these 3 teams that they got left. If there was going to be a letdown in my mind, it might have been at Army or even last week against Duke, a trap game. When you're looking at these 3 big games you got left to finish out the regular season, last week was a game where I thought they should be careful, how they prepare. And they obviously came out ready to play as they won 45-7 against not a great Duke team, but still, that's a place where you got to be careful as a Wake Forest team in that shot.
And Duke, numbers-wise, has been averaging almost 500 yards per game.
Yeah.
And while the starters were in, Wake held them to about 300. And they have one of the top running backs in the country, Durant. And they shut him down pretty well when it really mattered. So the defense stepped up in a big way and basically threw a shutout against the Duke starters, which was great to see. And you're exactly right. It would have been a game you could have looked past. And to be honest, Keith, that score could have been whatever Dave Clawson wanted it to be.
Yeah.
He could have made that score any number he wanted.
Yeah, it was exceptionally encouraging for me to see them take control of that game so quickly and not have that letdown that a lot of teams might have had there, knowing what's ahead of them and what's behind them. Everybody's got that game, right? And you guys have had a couple of those nail biters, though. I mean, it's the Syracuse game, and I think there was maybe the Louisville game.
The Louisville game, right?
Yeah, you had some games that builds a team's character and helps you learn how to win when you're not necessarily playing your best or you're in some adverse conditions, right?
They're also the kind of games that you have to win to have a special magic type season, because you lose those two games and it was a really good year. Nice job. Just didn't quite get to where we wanted to be. But you hang tough and you find a way to win those. And those are the ones that make the difference in the long run. And as you said, give you the confidence under pressure late in the game against a really good team like NC State, for example, that, okay, we've been here before. Let's not panic and get all nervous. We know we can do this. And the offense right now is playing at such a high level. Down and distance don't really matter to the Wake Forest offense right now. They've got something designed to get almost anything you need to get right now.
Yeah, this week against UNC, you got another powerful offense, obviously, with Sam Howell, and they're scoring points. I mean, last week, even in a loss, they still had 34 points. And what do we look for in this game? They're going to be able to slow down Sam Howell. Is there something we should really focus on as we watch this game this weekend?
You know that the Stars are going to get their yards. They're going to get what they're supposed to do. I think with Sam Howell, what you really need to do is he's going to get his passing yards. Don't let him get the big gains on the ground with his legs. He's one of the top players in the country with runs over 10 yards or more. I think he's number 2, I believe. And if you can keep him from making the 20 and 30-yard runs and getting into the end zone, then I think that bodes well, because Wake Forest has done a terrific job defensively in the red zone. They've been very good in the red zone, and they've been very good getting off the field on third down. And Dave Clawson explained some of the defensive laps by saying that with their offense that is scoring so much, and let's consider they scored 70 points in 17 and a half minutes of possession. They had the ball for 17 and a half minutes against Army and scored 70 points. So it's a big strike offense, has been all season long. And you look for, hopefully that continues. But that means your defense is getting out the field and defending for 80 and 90 plays because your offense isn't out there. So that makes it a little bit tougher for the defense too. But if Wake Forest can stop Sam Howell from making the long runs, I think they've got a good chance.
Well, I think this team, who I've adopted, again, I don't want to be a bandwagon jumper, but I like good stories as we've talked about. I've kind of adopted it, and I'm rooting for them every week. They're a team that they don't, as we just talked about, they don't seem to look ahead. They seem to just focus on the job that's in front of them each week. And that's the way you really put together a dream season, the way that they've done so far.
And, you hear everybody say it. We've got the 24-hour rule. We get to celebrate for 24 hours, and then it's down to business. Well, this group, and again, I go back to that senior leadership. They were there in 2019, and they saw it fall apart, and they saw the reasons that it fell apart, and they want to make sure that this year – and you won't find 10 Wake Forest players drafted every year. No. That's why Kenneth Walker went to Michigan State, is so he could get 25 carries a game, because their backs average 13 to 17 carries per game, and they mix it among 3 guys. And that's just the way the system is, and they're going to stick to that system. But it's worked so far. They do a great job of staying in the moment. And when I do my final lap around the field Saturday morning at about 10:15, I go around the entire field. I'll make sure that the guys know that Keith Engel has adopted them as his favorite team for a story for this year. I'll tell all the players, and I'm sure that that'll get them a little extra fired up.
How fast are you going when you do that lap?
I walk with a couple of the coaches sometimes, which is always really interesting too. But it's a great way just to get that last pulse, get my adrenaline going to get into the broadcast booth a half hour before we go on the air, and I'll name drop a little bit and tell them you're going to be listening this week. So
excellent. I'll be there with you in spirit, I promise you, because I think this show and your appearances on the show has been a good luck charm for Wake Forest. So we're going to have to continue this till we get them into the playoff and beyond.
Not that I'm superstitious or anything, Keith, but you notice I take every phone call you make, and I'm on every time you ask. So
I do. You're like the only guy I know that takes my call, so I appreciate that. It's not easy being me, I can tell you right now. So.
I've enjoyed it.
All right, listen, I thank you for coming on tonight and sharing your insight, and we'll probably chat quickly at least next week after this victory against the Tar Heels.
Be glad to do it. And the Tar Heels have a lot of talent. They were a preseason top 10 team for a reason.
Absolutely. You got a gauntlet in front of you, I think. But I think, again, this is a team that can get it done. Not because of me, believe me. Don't let me try to take any credit. So,
well,
Larry,
now's the fun time. This is why you play, is so that you have important games for the last part of your season.
Agreed. So thanks for coming on again. We'll talk to you again soon. And good luck this weekend. We'll be watching.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Go Deeks.
All right. Bye-bye. Awesome. Always a great visit with Lary Sorensen. And, God, what a great story Wake Forest is. I can't, I've adopted them. Maybe now they'll be sending me some swag. I'll send you my address, Larry. We'll get some swag up here, and I'll wear it next week. Yeah, I just buy my own. What the hell? The sports wearable sites love me. I know we had some comments up here, and I really didn't want to distract because they weren't necessarily geared towards. If they were, I apologize. So, a couple of things. Let me get some of your comments out here. We talked about that. Anthony Price says, "Please throw Harbaugh on the hot seat," and he just gets to go to the NFL. He may be on the hot seat. If he doesn't beat Ohio State, he'll have not beat Ohio State. He'll have lost two big games again. You got Ohio State in a couple of weeks. I don't think he's got a cakewalk this week. We'll look at this week's games here in a second. But Harbaugh, I would put Harbaugh seat still as warm. I mean, he's done a great job this year. They made him get rid of half his coaches. You saw how I went off on Aaron Boone. And not to get into off another sport, but I'm not really a big fan of guys who will let their coaches get fired and just to keep their job. So very interesting. Georgia's starting quarterback is almost healthy right now. Rick, Georgia is head and shoulders above everybody. The one team I don't have any problem with. I don't have any problem with Georgia's ranking. Let me go back to this again quick. And we'll take some more questions about this. I know Carlos. By the way, Carlos, welcome. I see you showed up, and I'll put your comment up in a second. So welcome aboard, and I'll expect you to contribute heavily the next 22 minutes. We got a lot to cover yet. I'll look at some of the big games this weekend, and also some coaches on the hot seat. But what was I looking at? Oh, got me distracted. Oh hell, we'll figure out who the hell they're playing later. I know they got to. Possibly. I know Carlos had some. This year's a ton. This year, a ton of teams have in the top 10 have older players. Yeah. COVID again with that 6 year of eligibility. I think Larry told me there was some 7 year seniors in some of the schools. Ton of transfers from the rules. Another thing that helps these teams get better. And some of the schools like Cincinnati, like the SMUs, they take really good advantage of this transfer portal. And it's not just the good schools that do it. COVID rule transfers. Well, there's lots of rules for transfers now. It's much easier today than ever before to be able to, move from one school to the other just because you're unhappy. Miles Brennan announced today that he'll be leaving LSU, maybe because Ed Orgeron's out. I'm not sure. I didn't read the whole article, but he'll be entering the transfer portal. And, I don't think it's wrong That's another one that I'm not totally sold on. I don't like the idea that they can just get up and leave every time. They don't have to keep a commitment. But if a school's going to fire the coach that recruited you, you should have a chance to move on, I think, in my mind. What do we have? Wake Forest defense is super key. You know what? They got to stop. They got to stop. Make some stops, right? As good as their offense is, they've got to make some stops. Larry talked about how they played well. You know, Duke isn't one of the best teams in the ACC for sure, but they do have a good offense. David Cutcliffe has always got a good offense, and they did a good job of stopping that offense last week. So maybe their defense is on the improve after that 56-point barrage that Army threw at them the week before. And I think Wake's a great story. Missouri this week. Thank you, Ray. I'm not sure Missouri's really doing a whole lot, and it's a non-league game. Very odd place for this non-league game for Michigan in my mind. Just a weird spot. Where is that game? No, they don't have Missouri. They got Indiana. Unless you're talking about something else, Rick. Sorry. They've got Indiana this week. By the way, Indiana, Michigan better be careful. Letdown from that big loss last week could carry over here. This is not a horrendous Indiana team. It's a disappointing one off a really good team last year. So Penn State's falling again. You're right there. They can't win big games. James Franklin, I've never been in love with the guy. He did a great job at Vanderbilt, but you go 500 at Vanderbilt, you did a great job. Oh, Missouri. Okay, Georgia's got Missouri. Okay, well, you're going to win by 60. Georgia, I have no problem with the ranking at all, obviously. Maybe the only team I don't have a problem with. I seem to have lost my rankings page here. Hold on. Bear with me a second while I get back to it. I went on to Wake Forest's. I have no problem with Georgia's ranking. I have no problem with Michigan State's ranking. I probably don't have a problem with Michigan. I don't have a problem with Wake Forest. I don't have a problem with Notre Dame. As we round out the top 10. You got some other teams outside of the top 10 who could make a run here. Oklahoma State could make a run if they win out. All depends on what happens to them in front of them. But I got a problem with Alabama being 2. Alabama should have been ranked outside the top 5 and make them win their way in. Same with Oregon. Cincinnati should not have been put in a position to have to win their way in. They just shouldn't. He said win by 60. I'm trying. He might. Rick Sherlock, I came for you. And Rick, Mickey is chasing you down in the pick'em pool because you both have missed weeks. So I guess you're battling each other. Alabama, you're asking if I have a problem with their ranking? I do. Big time. They lost to Texas A&M. They should not have lost that game. And they got one loss, and you got teams that are undefeated. Michigan State, Cincinnati, even Oklahoma. Why do style points matter? I don't say Alabama should have a chance to be in the top 4, and they will. But you could have put Alabama down at 8, 7, 10, and Alabama wins out. They're in. They're in with one loss if they beat Georgia in the championship game. Done deal. We already know 2 of the teams. If this were to play out, I know you don't want this scenario, Rick, but if this were to play out where Alabama wins out and beats Georgia and Georgia wins out and loses to Alabama, they're both in the playoff. Hello, Kenny. You missed all my trashing of Notre Dame. I didn't really trash them. Mickey and Rick are chasing each other in the pool. Gosh, I don't know how much we're going to get into. Let's talk real quick before we get into the games this week. I want to talk about some coaches in a hot seat. Mickey talked about Harbaugh. I think Harbaugh, if he loses to Ohio State again, will still be in trouble. We already lost Gary Patterson after 21 years at TCU, and I think it's a shame what happened to him. Some other guys that were in trouble. Manny Diaz, just 2 weeks ago, was in big trouble at Miami. They were talking about eating his buyout of $8 million. His seat's probably still warm, but it's cooled off a lot because Miami's played much, much better. And Miami's ready to go all in. They feel they got their quarterback of the future in Tyler Van Dyke, and it's possible Manny has, cooled that seat enough. Dino Babers at Syracuse, his seat's still warm. I think he's a really good coach. They've played much, much better the last month or so. And he's a quarterback away from having a competitive team probably, unless they collapse. Justin Fuentes at Virginia Tech, he's in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. Jeff Brom, you bring up Jeff Brom. I'll go back here. Carlos is, I'll go back to the standings in a second there, Carlos. I see your comment. Don't let me miss it. Big Ten. Oh, Jeff Brom in the Big Ten. Jeff Brom could be in trouble. I mean, he's got a big win at Iowa, but then they go and they throw up a stinker to follow that up against Minnesota. I think Jeff Brom at Purdue's probably worn out his welcome. Scott Frost is also going to be in trouble in the Big Ten. We already talked about Harbaugh. I think that Scott Frost had started to dig his way out of trouble, but I think it's probably. Hang on one second here. Of course, I can't. Well, there we go. So we're talking about coaches. Scott Frost started to get himself out of trouble. The team started to find an identity on offense, and they've just gone the other way with a tough schedule left. This team could finish 3-7. How are they going to keep him? Who else we want to talk about? I don't really care about these MAC teams. The coach at Colorado State, Steve Adazio, used to coach at Boston College. Very odd fit for Colorado State, and playing in the Mountain West in the beginning. No reason they should have even done it. Big 12 or Pac-12 rather. Herm Edwards, ASU was playing great. One of Mark Mancini's favorite teams. Another Mancini. I'm sorry, Mark, but another Mancini jinx. Herm Edwards is now probably in a lot of trouble, and I think is probably going to get fired. Chip Kelly started out very, very well, and the season has gone downhill on him pretty quickly. They're gonna have improved over last year. 8-4 is still possible. More likely it'll be 7-5. Will that be enough to keep his job? Probably, but his seat's warming up. And the SEC, Dan Mullen is getting much hotter. This team is in a rebuilding mode, but I think he's showing that he doesn't quite get what it takes to win at Florida and how you need to recruit to win at Florida. He's made bad moves with his quarterbacks. So I think Mullen's in trouble. And that's all the top teams. Those are guys that I think are probably going to have some problems. Let's catch up on some of your comments before I move on to this week's game. I'll talk about the Heisman a little bit. I talked a little bit about the Heisman, by the way. I got Kenny Walker moving way up. I was talking a little bit with, I can't remember if I was talking with Jim or Larry, but right now I was looking at the odds, right? Bryce Young's still the odds-on favorite, really, to win the Heisman. And it's because he's the Alabama quarterback. He's had a great year, but you and I, I said Mac Jones. I don't want to belittle Bryce Young because I did the same thing to Mac Jones, and I've been proven wrong about Mac Jones just being good because of all the talent around him. So I don't want to sell Bryce Young short, but I don't know. And maybe the voters have soured on quarterbacks a little bit after a lot of quarterbacks winning before Devontae Smith won last year. Matt Corral was probably the odds-on favorite before he got hurt, and Mississippi started losing some games, which took the shine off him a little bit. C.J. Stroud at Ohio State has really started to pick up his game and play much cleaner quarterback, and they've played very well. He's played very well during a 6-game winning streak for Oklahoma. But the guy I think has made the biggest move, Kenneth Walker at Michigan State after that 5-touchdown performance. He's now rushed for over 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns. I'm sorry, he's rushed for almost 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. You know, a couple more big games, and Walker could get the running backs back into the conversation for the Heisman. You know, it's funny. Vegas has got Caleb Williams from Oklahoma on the board. He does have 14 touchdown passes, but guys, he's only played half the games. And Kenny Pickett, his chances probably took a huge hit last week. And some of the other guys, you know, Desmond Ridder for Cincinnati has struggled a bit the last few weeks. He was in the top 10, and he's kind of falling down the list a little bit. I know you don't like Ridder. I think Carlos. I'm going to get to your comments here in a second. I promise. Robinson from Texas, I think, has dropped way back. Sam Hartman's never got the love, as we talked about with Lary Sorensen at Wake Forest. And the guy that, and I mentioned Thibodeau last week as being a guy a defensive guy who could be in play for the Heisman, hasn't played enough, probably missed the first, 3 weeks, I think, of the season. But I left out your guy last week, Rick. I left out Jordan Davis, who will get some votes. I don't think he'll finish anywhere in the top 5, top 6, but he'll get some votes. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Carlos, Liberty and Ole Miss will shake up the standings. You're talking about the games this week, Carlos? Don't know who's playing who. We'll look at that in a second. We'll follow up on that so I don't waste time looking for the game, because I want to get through these games fairly quickly. Who we got here? Carlos, Harbaugh will quit before they fire him. Well, either way, his seat's hot and he's going to go. If he loses to Ohio State, mark my words, he's gone, whether he quits or gets fired. I mean, it's always semantics anyway. Teams and coaches amicably decide to part, like Orgeron and LSU. He got fired. They announced first that Gary Patterson and TCU had mutually agreed he should leave. They fired him. And you're right, Harbaugh would probably try to get out before he they can't fire all of them. Well, they can. You got to win. There's a lot of coaches out there waiting for jobs, and a lot of guys who have already been fired that'll be looking for work as well. But we're talking about a very small percentage of guys. Your guy's safe, Kenny. He's the all-time winning coach in Notre Dame history. Chip Kelly, I don't know, Anthony. I think he'll get another year. Anthony Price says, I don't know. Bryce Young will win because it's Alabama. Shaking his head, I think, is I'm not great with these acronyms, but I think that's shaking my head. Definitely agree. You look at the Pittsburgh quarterback has played great. Unfortunately, the record will probably hurt him. I think he's a tremendous player. He's going to be a tremendous pro quarterback, I think, as well. Carlos is talking about this week's games. All right, so let's jump into this week's games a little bit. We're going to go a little over probably. I'll be on with Larry Frank, by the way, at 9:25-ish on the Frankly Speaking Sports Show to break down the Carolina Patriot game if anybody's interested. But right now we're going to break down a little college football. Let's look at the top 25. As we talked about earlier, Georgia has Missouri at home. No worries there, Rick. You're going to win by 60. Probably not 60. Sorry, Anthony. That was a little bit of hyperbole. Ohio State goes to Nebraska. Nebraska has had some close calls with some good teams. Michigan, close call with Oklahoma. Hasn't been able to go over the top. I don't think they're going to be in this game at all. I don't think they're going to be in my don't be surprised if. By the way, last week's don't be surprised if finally fell through. I've been very good at picking a really big underdog and saying they'll be in the game with a chance to win in the fourth quarter. Florida was my pick last week. We know what happened there. Wake Forest at North Carolina. This is going to be a really fun game, guys. It's at noon on Saturday. I really like Wake Forest here. I like good stories. Wake Forest is a great story, and I'm going to stick with them. Liberty and Ole Miss. Look at Liberty's a good football team. You can't sell them short here. And Ole Miss has had a couple of tough losses. Frank Corral is really, I won't say Frank Corral. I think he was a kicker. Matt Corral has been really banged up with a bad ankle, and his play has suffered, and Ole Miss has suffered for it. But I think Ole Miss will get the win at home here. I'm not sure. You got to let me know I don't know where that's going to shake up the standings, though, Carlos. If Georgia struggles with Missouri, they need to replace them with Cincinnati in the standing. I think you're busting my chops there, Carlos. Here's the thing, but that brings up a good point before I continue. Georgia doesn't need any style points. They're going to stay number one as long as they win. They can beat Missouri by 1. They can beat all the teams they play the rest of the way out by 1, and they're going to be number 1. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. And Cincinnati maybe should have to have more style points than Georgia, especially at this point. But don't tell me Cincinnati can't play with Georgia, because as we talked about with Jim Beringer earlier, I watched Cincinnati play Georgia last year. Dead even in that game. They lost, but they accounted themselves very, very well. I already had that one. Lane Kiffin will blow this home game. I know you hate Lane Kiffin. He's a clown. Keith, are you going to make the top 10 of your own pick before the NFL is done? Am I going to make the top 10? I'm already in the top 10. I'm in like 4th, aren't I? Pretty sure. Mickey wants to talk about my NFL pick. I think I'm 10. I think I'm in 4th place. I don't know. Don't be surprised if Mark gets one right this week. I don't know what he's picked. He's not here to pick anything. So I think he's in pretty good shape and not getting any wrong. Illinois at Minnesota. Listen, Minnesota's come from nowhere to lead the South of the Big Ten, and they're playing a very bad Illinois team. And Minnesota's probably going to play in the Big Ten championship game and get their butts kicked by they played Ohio State tough in the first game of the season. Minnesota's probably better than they were then, but so is Ohio State. And if Ohio State takes, look at Ohio State. The more I think about it, let's take a quick look at something here. The Big Ten. Right now, Ohio State wouldn't even be in the Pac-12 championship game. They're 5-0. They would be. And they do have MSU on their schedule. So that's going to take care of itself. As we talked about earlier, Big Ten's going to take care of itself. Probably only one team coming out of there. And if it's Michigan for some reason, hey, who knows? What else we got here? I'm not 17th place. You got to read better, Mickey. I'm not going to look today, though. It's our college football show, so I think you're wrong. We'll talk about it Sunday morning. I'll show you the standings. Take a look again at the standings. I can't be in 17th place. Oh, well, I don't know where I am. You got me all flabbergasted now. Where was I? Pittsburgh goes to Duke. Should be a win for Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett, as Carlos mentioned, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He'll be a really good pro. He's going to be a very high draft pick, and he's going to have a really good pro career. Michigan State, goes to Purdue. Not a bad Purdue team. Got to be careful, Michigan State. You don't have a letdown here. We talked about Jeff Brom maybe being in trouble at Purdue. I think this team, if they finish, 7-4, Jeff Brom will probably keep his job. If they fall apart, then they may not make it. What happened in Illinois? They've never been great, and they did compete and cause some heartache. Yeah, but not in a lot of years. The last few coaches they had, Lovie Smith didn't do a good job there. Ron Zook, who came from Florida, didn't do a good job there. He had a couple of decent teams, but the last time I remember Illinois having a decent team was back in the 80s with Mike White as a head coach and Tony Eason being the quarterback. My boy Mark Mancini ought to love that reference. Carlos. Carlos, the coach hater. Me too. There's some coaches I don't like either, Carlos. Not always the same one as you. Cincinnati gets Tulsa this week. Tulsa's really on a downswing. Again, one of the knocks on the AAC, or the one of the knocks on Cincinnati, we're going over. Cincinnati is the AAC's down a little bit this year. They don't have the depth that they have. They're good at the top. Cincinnati's good. Houston's good. SMU's good. But Tulsa and Memphis and UCF are down a little bit. And that hurts Cincinnati's ranking a little bit. The fact that Indiana hasn't had a good year hurt them. But they played them. We didn't know that when they played them. Cincinnati's getting jobbed here. They put them on the outside so they didn't have to take them out. They know Cincinnati can't get higher than where they put them today because the other teams all get to play better teams. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I still think Cincinnati is one of the best 4 teams in the country. Navy, as we always talk about the armed forces teams, will go to Notre Dame. Navy's given Notre Dame fits over the years. They're not going to give them fits this year. They're going to roll. Send them to the Giants as clock management is better than judges. You guys are way off the college path today. Tulsa. Why? You guys don't really think Ole Miss is getting rid of Lane Kiffin. Black Horse is Kentucky this year. The dark horse, I think. Dark horse. I know what you meant. Dark horse. You're right. Kentucky's played really good football. I've been talking Kentucky up because I think Mike Stoops is a great, great coach. And this is a really good Kentucky team playing in the best conference in football. They played in the Pac-12, they'd be winning it all. They played in the Big 12, they'd be winning it all. They'd certainly be winning it all in the AAC, maybe. They'd be giving Cincinnati a run for their money. Kentucky's a good team. We'll get to their game here in a second, probably. Oklahoma State at West Virginia. Oklahoma State not out of this race yet. They can win the Big 12. Can they get in the playoff with one loss? Not really sure, but if they run a table, they're going to win the Big 12. They still got Oklahoma left yet, twice if they get to play them in the championship game. Baylor's still with an outside shot. They're going to go to TCU. Will TCU be fired up for their fired coach, or will they lay down? We'll see what they have to say there. Oh, Carlos is. Oh, okay. All right. I thought you were giving him a compliment, Carlos. I should have known better. One of the marquee games of the day, and a day that's not got a lot of marquee matchups. Auburn will travel to Texas A&M. Very important game in the SEC. Auburn still with a chance to get into the SEC championship game, and so does Texas A&M, I believe. You got Georgia going to get in, obviously. Auburn's still alive. Auburn beats Alabama. They're going to get to the SEC championship game, and I believe that game is at Auburn's home field this time around. So this is a big game for Auburn, and Texas A&M is playing much, much better football. Idaho State at BYU. That'll be a big win for BYU. Wisconsin at Rutgers. You know what? Rutgers could be a live underdog this week. Arkansas, Mississippi State. Arkansas is really falling on some hard times. Mississippi State's playing some good football. They're actually ranked, I think, 16th in that playoff poll. NC State goes to a bad Florida State team. They'll get Wake Forest in 2 weeks, NC State. LSU at Alabama. No chance for LSU here. This is going to be a 40-point blowout as well. Kentucky gets Rocky Top. What do you got there? So you're taking Rock. I know you're taking Tennessee, Carlos. Carlos got a few other comments here. Oh, okay, got that one. Auburn has too many mascots. Where's game day this week? Anybody know where game day is? I'm going to say game day is at I'm going to say they're at Texas A&M and Auburn, but we'll see. Iowa at Northwestern. Iowa's fallen off the map. What a horrible, horrible job. I really like Kirk Ferentz, but just not a good job here as this team has just imploded. Fresno State has righted the ship a little bit last week. I think they got too much for Boise State. Oregon goes to Washington. This is the game, and you're not going to like this. Carlos thinks LSU can beat Alabama. I'll put that up in a second. If you're still here, Anthony Price, upset alert. Don't be surprised if Washington beats Oregon this week. That's my upset. Michigan and Indiana. Be careful, Michigan. I think both Michigan and Michigan State got to be careful this week for trap games. San Diego State plays Hawaii. San Diego State playing really good football. Hawaii's a tough place to go and play. Teams don't play well there, but whether it's the travel, whether it's the distractions, I don't know. And in a big game for the Armed Forces, Army travels to Air Force. That will be a very entertaining game. Both teams really good players. So I already gave you my don't be surprised if. My lock of the week will be going against Carlos. I could go with Georgia, but I'm going to go just because Carlos said LSU can be beat. I'm sorry, LSU can beat Alabama. Alabama has a few injuries. No. Alabama's going to score more than 14 points. Tennessee, for us, a half. But, Carlos, there's 4 quarters in a football game. Alabama's my lock. Alabama over LSU. LSU's quitting. Their team's quitting. Their coach is out. The team has quit. That's just my opinion, of course. And that's all I got. I'll give you guys a chance to give me a few more comments. So we bring up a little bit of our drum. You got a couple last comments you want to throw up there? You can do it. Somebody's got something here. It's got to be Carlos. Tennessee, then they got to shorten games to 2 quarters for Tennessee to ever compete again, Carlos. Guys, lots of comments. I love your participation in the show. Thank you, all of you. Carlos, Rick, Anthony, Mickey, Kenny. Who else was here today? Anybody I missed? I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones that I've missed that maybe didn't comment. Thank you to my guest, Jim Beringer, and the great Lary Sorensen, color coordinator. What's a color coordinator? Oh, my God. Color analyst at Wake Forest. Thanks to Lary Sorensen. I'm their good luck charm now. Don't be surprised if Mark gets wondering. Well, that's an old comment. Rick, we'll see you Sunday, buddy. We'll see how we did. Great weekend. This is what you can be sure of. Everything we think today will be different next Wednesday when we talk. And the Wednesday after that, and the Wednesday after that. That's the great thing about college football. That's the great thing about these polls. We can debate all day. Cincinnati's got a job. Keith Engel, TGI Sports Talk, right here. TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle, right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. We'll see you guys next Wednesday.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.